Shepard, and today we're going to discuss part 2 of chapter 12. Alyssa covered part 1 of chapter 12 and discussed what is a leader, different leadership styles, and everything that ties into that. And now we're going to go over behavioral approaches to leadership. So let's dive right into it. First, we're going to discuss learning objectives. So the first learning objective is explain the behaviors that are associated with leadership. The second is identify the 3 alternative decision-making styles that leaders will use and the conditions under which will determine which is most effective and efficient. And lastly, discuss the limitations of behavioral approaches to leadership. So we're going to talk about the very first objective, which is about leader behaviors. Research has shown the discovery of these 2 broad categories of behaviors, one being task-oriented behavior and the other one being people-oriented behavior. Task-oriented behavior is when you have behaviors or directions given to employees to get things done, and they ensure that organizational goals are being met. This task-oriented, also known as initiating structure, is organizing the roles and behaving in ways that will increase the performance of the group overall. People-oriented behaviors, which is also known as consideration, is more so concerning with your employees' feelings. You're treating them, with respect. You generally care about their well-being, and they demonstrate their concern through actions and decisions. So usually with people-oriented behavior, you're going to get more democratic decision-making, which we're getting to on the next slide. And with task-oriented, it could be either democratic or authoritarian. It kind of just depends, but I'll explain more of that like I said in the next slide. With task-oriented behavior as well, productivity tends to be a bit higher and it's more effective in small businesses, small work environments and organizations. With people-oriented behaviors, it could be either or depending on what business it is, and these employees tend to be more satisfied with this behavior and react more positively. Both of these behaviors are very beneficial, but they aren't necessarily effective. It does not make a leader effective. So now we're going into objective 2, which is the leader decision making, and this will be the 3 types that we briefly went over. So the first one is authoritarian, and these are when leaders make all their decisions alone. They don't have any input, no involvement, no participation whatsoever within their employees in the decision-making process. They are by themselves making all the decisions for the organization. Second is democratic. This is when leaders give the employees an opportunity to be involved and to participate in the decision-making process. And the third is laissez-faire, and this is when leaders are basically hands-off. They give some guidance in the beginning, but they're very limited and they're very minimal when it comes to their involvement within the decision. So with this one, employees basically get to make all their decisions alone. So out of these 3, there wasn't one that researchers identified as the best one. It really determines the circumstances of the organization, which will result in which is the most effective. And of course, there are pros and cons to each of these 3 leader decision-making styles. So the first one obviously being it's least favorable. It gives very limited choice in their employees' voices. It's not one that a lot of people enjoy versus, democratic and laissez-faire. This will, a pro of this, although, would be structure and organized. So usually with large organizations, this is a good one to use instead of like democratic, because then you have too much participation and involvement with this, although just the leaders are making the decision. So this works better for larger groups and organizations. The second one is the most democratic is the most favorable. A very big one is, participation, which makes your employees feel, satisfied, appreciated, and involved. Although the con with this one would be the effect on decision quality or employee productivity is weaker, which, we kind of touched on a little bit. And the last one is the most problematic. It creates a high levels of conflict and high levels of dissatisfaction of employees, because it creates, ambiguity between, what the leaders want their employees to do, but they're not really saying that. They're not really informing, teaching that. So the employees are doing what they think. So it can create a lot of confusion and conflict. Although a pro, this is experiencing, your own decision making, which can create into your leadership skills. So now we're going to dive into the leadership assumptions that come with human nature of managers. And this is brought by Douglas McGregor, who's a management professor at MIT, who wrote the book around this. It's called The Human Side of Enterprise, and it is based on two theories, Theory X and Theory Y. And as you can probably tell, Theory X is a much more negative view, Theory Y is a much more positive view. So with Theory X, we have managers thinking employees are lazy and they don't enjoy their work and they lack ambition, and everything that kind of ties into the negative aspect and approach and assumptions about, their employees. And those have, pretty bad results. They have rigid, work environments, and those managers must take full responsibility of their employees' actions, because the employees will never take initiative outside of their regular job duties to complete such specific tasks. And then on the other side of that, it's the very opposite. You have Theory Y being a much more positive view. The employees aren't lazy, they enjoy their work, they put effort into furthering their organizational goals in their work. These managers allow employees autonomy and help them become committed to specific goals and to achieve a more supportive role. They maintain and pertain a healthy and productive work environment. Employees can be innovative within their roles, which is super important. So Douglas McGregor illustrates the mindset of a manager's actions toward employees within these two basic mindsets of assumptions about employee attitudes. So when I was reading this, I was reflecting on how what kind of manager I want to be and how I wouldn't want to make assumptions about my employees. In the Theory X category, I would think that most, managers or leaders at least would think more, what would have a more positive mindset like Theory Y. So this is our last learning objective, which is the limitations of behavioral approaches. Improving our leadership styles would be to become conscious about our theories of human nature and question the validity of our implicit theories. So behavioral approaches are very similar to trait approaches although they fell out of favor because they neglected the environment in which behaviors are demonstrated. The hope of the researchers was that the identified behaviors that we had discussed could not predict leadership under all circumstances, as though it may be realistic to expect that a given set of behaviors would work under all circumstances. What makes the president of a university effective on the job is very different from what makes a military leader effective, or a general manager, or high school principal, or whatever, have you. Which, these behaviors create success, whether it's a large or a small business enterprise. It turns out that specifying the conditions under which these behaviors are more effective may be a better approach. Okay, thank you guys so much for listening to my part of the presentation. Part 3 will be talked about by Margaret, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.